Sup gamers, Randy Potato here with a guide to the Shroud biome. We'll cover the Shroud enemy pool, the unique conditions and trinkets found in this region, and how to defeat the region boss, the Leviathan. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe, and click that join button or sub to my Patreon in the description if you want early access to all my upcoming videos. The Shroud is a bleed-based region, defined by its Lair Boss, the Leviathan, whose breath can spawn at any turn start of any combat, causing a chance of blind and stress for your full party. Many enemies apply barnacles, which will add bleed to targets who move. The region features guaranteed watchtowers and oases, with standard allotment of other locations. The Lair Boss is by far the toughest in the game, with its hero stealing mechanic, and by far the worst rewards, with both trophies and trinkets being extremely underwhelming. The trinkets offer a variety of benefits, offering mostly bleed-based awards, but also giving specific movement buffs in many cases. Strong move and stun resist is key in this region, but especially important against the Lair Boss itself. Now let's move on to the specialized enemy pool. The Wharf Rat has 14 HP and no DBR. From any rank, they can use Sucker Punch, usable against rank 1 or 2, dealing 3 to 5 damage and 2 bleed. From the back row, they can use Briny Spray against any rank, dealing 3 to 5 damage, gaining stealth, and applying barnacles and 2 stress. The Bosun has 17 HP and no DBR. From the front row, they have Heave Ho, usable against the front row, dealing 3 to 6 damage and a knockback of 1. From the back row, they have Spearfishing, usable against the back row, doing 3 to 5 damage and a pull of 1. And from ranks 2 to 3, they have Cheat Move Sodden Rigging, usable against any rank, and dealing 2 to 4 damage, reducing move resist by 10, and stun, with a cooldown of 2. Their elite version, the Hallkeeper, has 24 HP and 25% DBR. They retain Heave Ho, Spearfishing, and Sodden Rigging with some buffs. Heave Ho and Spearfishing both now do 48 damage, with a knockback or pull of 2, respectively. Sodden Rigging does 2 to 5 damage, with the same move resist reduction and stun, and also adds a Vuln and 1 or 2 stress, with a rigged cooldown of 1. The Fishmonger is another cheater, with 16 HP, no DBR, and 2 actions per round. They will generally start combat with Whetstone, a self buff from the back row, adding either Dodge or Dodge Plus, and a crit token. It has a 3-turn cooldown. They have 2 attacks from the back 3 ranks, both usable against the back 3 and dealing 3 to 4 damage. Flens also applies 2 bleed, while D-Bone applies weak, vulnerable, and a stress. The Cabin Boy is a 13 HP foe with an absurd 13 speed and no DBR. Both their skills are usable from any position. They will always open with Spawning Ground, getting 2 of 5 potential buffs, either healing 25 HP, adding a strength, crit, dodge plus, or block plus. Their next turn they will use Spawning Ground, a single target attack against any rank, dealing 3 to 7 base damage, transforming into a random Shroud enemy, not including the Hallkeeper, adding 2 block plus tokens, a chance of applying the Algal Bloom Disease, and gaining Newborn Mutation, a buff which gives them 25% damage and 3 speed, and a 33% chance of adding block when hit. The Captain has 23 HP and no DBR. If in rank 4, it will always start combat with All Hands on Deck, a full party buff giving 2 positive tokens to each enemy, either crit, strength, dodge plus, block plus, or speed. It has a 2-turn cooldown. From any rank, they can use Keel Haul, usable against the front 3 ranks, dealing 6 to 8 damage, a chance to add barnacles, and adding a debuff to the target where they gain an additional 1 bleed. Coral Grief is usable from ranks 2 or 3, dealing 3 to 6 damage, giving a self bluff of apply bleed when hit, and adding weak and a chance of stress to the target. And finally, Big Daddy Docker is a size 2 enemy with 46 HP and a 33% DBR. From the back row, he can only use Brine Bucket, a single target attack against the front 3, dealing 6 to 10 damage and adding a barnacle. From the front, they can use Hullbreaker, a single target front row attack dealing 10 to 18 damage and a chance at knockback. From the front, they also have Make Way, a full party AoE dealing 3 to 7 damage, 1 stress, and a shuffle on a 3-turn cooldown. Now on to how to handle the various enemy mashes. First up is the Wharf Rat. This enemy is entirely pathetic, doing essentially nothing compared to every other enemy. In the back, they can cheat with Briny Spray, but it has a long cooldown. If they spawn in the back row, you generally want to yank them forward, otherwise ignore them if you have the range to do so. Easy and free stalling opponent. Next up we have the Bosun. If in ranks 2 to 3, they're quite obnoxious with their stun available. The Shuffle is obviously annoying too, but if they're stuck in ranks 1 or 4, they're generally no problem. The stun isn't too bad on a long cooldown, but focus them down ahead of a lot of enemies because of how fragile they are. When the Bosun upgrade to the Hallkeeper, then you have something to worry about. The Shuffles become far more dangerous and they can stun every other round. Only the Cabin Boy takes priority over this foe, though they have higher HP and DBR, which makes them a multi-turn target generally. Relatively resistant to bleed and blight, which is also obnoxious. The Fishmonger is one of the most deceptively dangerous enemies. With multiple turns per round plus their crit, they can easily double target and destroy a single ally if they choose to do so. They also gain dodge with their buff, so it makes it tougher to eliminate them early, especially since they generally spawn back rank. With no DBR and fairly low HP, however, it's worth a few rolls to get them out of the picture. Movement is a temporary solution if you can yank them to 1, where they do basically nothing and then move back. The Cabin Boy should always be your top priority if they enter a mash. They always attack with a crit, they always transform into a super buffed enemy, and they're obnoxious to finish off despite their low HP and lack of DBR. Dump everything you have into this enemy on turn 1 regardless of the circumstances, and you'll feel much better for the rest of the combat. The Captain is a brutal foe, always opening with their super team buff. If you can yank them out of position 4 before they move, they only have 2 speed, then you're good to go, though they do quite a lot of damage in other positions. Certainly not a priority as long as they're out of rank 4, with their relatively higher HP, though they lack DBR. Finally, we have Big Daddy Docker. That guy is a massive threat, with AoE and a huge single target damage, especially when ordained. He can't be easily rushed because of his absurd HP pool and DBR, but he's also hard to ignore because of his size, taking up all of the front row, and his obnoxious shuffle. Generally, it's easier to eliminate the back row if possible and leave yourself one-on-one with the Great One. Thankfully, Make Way has a long cooldown, so if you have a tank, and you should have a tank, in the Shroud at least, you can absorb his most difficult blows. He's pretty susceptible to both bleed and burn, and even blight, so those are some pretty sound options. If he happens to spawn in the back, or if you can yank other enemies forward, he's fairly move resist himself, then you can block his worst skills, though this is mostly a temporary solution. Now on to the most terrifying beast in this game, the Leviathan. The Leviathan is a size 2 enemy with 155 HP and 33% DBR. They only have 1 real turn per round, but they also have a bunch of random free actions. They will begin every round with a free action, Breath of the Sea, if the Leviathan's hand is not present. Breath of the Sea is a full party AoE, which ignores blind on himself and dodge on your team, giving a chance of blind, vuln, and stress. They will then use Eyes of the Storm. This attack targets 2 random heroes, ignoring stealth, guard, dodge, and blind on self. This attack does 3 to 7 damage and applies a token called Call of the Deep. These tokens act as marks and determine which targets the hand can attack, but more on that later. At the end of the turn, if there is no Leviathan's hand, the Leviathan will perform another free action, Deep Rising, and summon the Leviathan's hand. With the Leviathan's hand present, they usually spam Tidal Surge every round, a full party AoE that does 3 to 7 damage, a chance at adding stress and barnacles, and a small chance at the algal bloom disease. If the Leviathan's hand is present but there are no heroes with Call of the Deep tokens for whatever reason, they will use Eye of the Storm, a single target attack that does the same thing as Eyes of the Storm. Now on to the Leviathan's hand. The Leviathan's hand has 24 HP, no DBR, and average dot resists. They have 2 actions per round. The main mechanic is their Drown mechanic, where they will steal a hero. If a hero is not stolen, they will start the round with Undertow, which is usable only against the front 2 ranks, and only against a target with a Call of the Deep token. It cannot be countered with Dodge, Stealth, Blind, or Guard, but will check instead against Move Resist. Once underwater, the hero will lose 4 HP and gain 2 stress every round, and obviously will be unusable. All heroes will move up 1 rank instead. They only have 1 other move, Batter, usable only against a hero with the Call of the Deep token. It does 6 to 8 damage and a chance of 1 or 2 stress. Obviously this whole fight revolves around the hand mechanic and playing around it. If you can cheese the undertow mechanic with move resist, and cheese the placement of the special tokens using taunt, then the boss is usually winnable, even though it's still a cheater and will destroy your whole party. You can't handle the onslaught of damage and stress otherwise with only 3 heroes long term. Having some powerful direct damage is generally king here, as well to quickly eliminate the hand if it does succeed. High HP helps as well, because if you get targeted at all with a medium HP hero, you're going to get battered to death's door. Unfortunately, this boss is stupidly cheaty and powerful, so outside of move resist cheesing, put your high move resist heroes in the front and buff them if possible. And having an otherwise generally powerful team, there's not any real trick to this fight. Just enter at low stress and high HP and survive long enough to melt the absurd 155 HP. Even with my best teams, I still often end up limping out of this fight, and the trophies are very bad and the trinkets merely okay. Just don't do this fight, and the Shroud in general, until you're a very experienced player and want to challenge yourself. Overall, the Shroud is a stupid and unfair region that features the best music and design in the game, but should still be avoided with most teams outside of challenge runs. If you have a bleed team, this is a great place to come to scale, and the oases are nice, but it's otherwise a slog with bad trophies and a ridiculous boss. Avoid. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe. I post new videos every day. And become a YouTube member or join my Patreon in the description for early access to my upcoming videos.